This is Gwyneth Paltrow, before Goop, before Iron Man, back when one corseted role changed her life forever. Shakespeare in Love wasn't just another costume drama. It was chaos and ruffles and lace, a movie that blindsided the box office, hijacked the Oscars, and turned a 26-year-old into Hollywood royalty overnight. But behind the romance was a storm, a role Julia Roberts abandoned, a script Gwyneth almost refused, and an ending no one in Hollywood saw coming. This is how Shakespeare in Love changed everything and made Gwyneth Paltrow a star. Early career. To understand the impact of Shakespeare in Love, we first need to look at Gwyneth Paltrow before Viola de Lesseps. She made her film debut in 1991's Shout, acting alongside John Travolta. The movie didn't leave much of a mark, but it got her noticed in casting circles. That same year, she popped up in a blink and you'll miss it cameo as young Wendy in Steven Spielberg's Hook. Spielberg, her godfather, had given her the part. It was more of a Hollywood footnote than a breakthrough, but it quietly introduced her to big productions. The real turning point came in 1995 with David Fincher's Seven. Paltrow played Tracy Mills, the wife of Brad Pitt detective. Her role was small but unforgettable, especially in the film's devastating finale. Off-screen, she and Pitt became one of Hollywood's golden couples, which only boosted her public profile. Still, she was seen as the girlfriend or the supporting role, not yet a star in her own right. That changed with 1996's Emma. Taking on Jane Austen's iconic heroine, Paltrow surprised audiences with her ability to carry an entire film and impressed critics with her authentic English accent. The film earned strong reviews, and suddenly Gwyneth was being talked about as a serious actress with real range. But while the praise was there, the box office was modest. She was admired, respected, promising, but not yet a cultural phenomenon. And then came Viola, landing the role. Here's where fate, timing, and personal heartbreak collide. Shakespeare in Love was not originally Gwyneth Paltrow's project. In the early 1990s, it was at Universal Pictures, with Julia Roberts originally attached as Viola. She even began rehearsals, hoping Daniel Day-Lewis would join as Shakespeare. But when he declined, Roberts walked away and the film collapsed. Years later, Miramax revived the project with director John Madden. Paltrow's name came up, but she almost never even gave it a chance. Why? Because she was in the middle of a painful breakup with Brad Pitt. At the time, she admitted she couldn't face going to England, couldn't face diving into work. The script sat untouched for weeks. Finally, she opened it, and everything changed. Paltrow later said, "I couldn't put it down. It was perfect." She knew she had to do it. But getting the role wasn't passive. She actively fought for the film's integrity. She pushed back against Harvey Weinstein's idea of casting Ben Affleck as Shakespeare, insisting the role needed an English actor. That's how Joseph Fiennes won the part, and how the film's romantic center truly came to life. From the ashes of Roberts' version and her own heartbreak, Gwyneth Paltrow stepped forward to claim the role that would define her career. Behind the scenes. What happened next was a masterclass in dedication. On set, Paltrow immersed herself completely. The production demanded long days and heavy corsets, hours of rehearsals for Elizabethan dances, fight scenes, and the rhythm of Shakespearean dialogue. Director John Madden later summed her up perfectly. She had the poise of a classical actress and the timing of a modern one. That duality, rooted in history but alive in the present, was exactly what made Viola work. What stood out to the crew wasn't just her professionalism, but her warmth. She treated everyone with respect, carrying herself as a collaborator rather than a diva. Even the most difficult costume adjustments became moments of laughter, not frustration. Madden would later say they rehearsed Shakespeare in Love more extensively than any film he's done since. The set itself was buzzing with energy. Judi Dench as Queen Elizabeth, Geoffrey Rush as the flamboyant theater owner, Ben Affleck as a supporting role. But through it all, it was Paltrow who anchored the production with grace and heart. And when filming wrapped, everyone knew something special had been captured on screen. The performance. When the cameras rolled, Gwyneth Paltrow stepped into Viola de Lesseps with a performance that was both radiant and grounded. This wasn't just acting, it was transformation. From her very first scenes opposite Joseph Fiennes, the chemistry was undeniable. Their connection felt alive, electric, as if the love story between Viola and Shakespeare had leapt out of history itself. Critics called it luminous, captivating, graceful. Variety praised her luminosity that makes Viola irresistible, while the New York Times declared her breathtaking. What Paltrow managed to do was thread an impossible needle, making Viola feel timeless yet relatable. She was noble and witty, but also vulnerable and passionate. And in the moments when Viola's love inspires Shakespeare himself, audiences could believe it. They could see how her presence could ignite the greatest love story ever written. This was no longer the promising young actress from Emma or the girlfriend from Seven. This was a star. And as her star was rising, so too was the film itself. The film's impact. Shakespeare in Love could have been a niche film, a clever period romance admired by critics but ignored at the box office. Instead, it became a sensation. Made for around $25 million, it went on to gross nearly $300 million worldwide. For a costume drama about Elizabethan theater, those numbers were staggering. The witty script, lush production design, and Paltrow's star-making turn drew in audiences who might otherwise have skipped it. It wasn't just a film. It became a cultural event. And then came award season. The film earned 13 Academy Award nominations and walked away with 7 wins, including the crown jewel, Best Picture. Judi Dench, with less than 10 minutes of screen time, claimed Best Supporting Actress. John Madden earned a directing nod, and Gwyneth Paltrow's name was forever etched into Oscar history. What made that night even more unforgettable was the drama surrounding it. Going into the ceremony, Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan was the heavy favorite. A gritty, monumental war film, it seemed destined for Best Picture. But Miramax, led by Harvey Weinstein, mounted one of the most aggressive awards campaigns Hollywood had ever seen. Screenings, ads, endless lobbying. It changed the way Oscar races were fought, and against all odds, Shakespeare in Love triumphed. To this day, the upset is debated as one of the most shocking victories in Academy history. But for the audience at home, the single moment that burned itself into memory was Gwyneth Paltrow. That night, she walked onto the stage in a soft pink Ralph Lauren gown, now ranked among the most iconic Oscar dresses of all time. When her name was called for Best Actress, she broke down in tears, clutching the golden statue. Through sobs, she thanked her parents, her co-stars, and even the English teachers who first nurtured her love of language. Some viewers mocked the tears as overwrought. Others found them deeply moving. Either way, the world was watching. It was a coronation, a moment of pure vulnerability and triumph rolled into one. At just 26 years old, Gwyneth Paltrow had reached the very peak of Hollywood. Reflections. Looking back years later, Paltrow called the experience of making Shakespeare in Love magical, and for many on set, it truly was. Director John Madden remembered her not just as a leading lady, but as a collaborator who lifted everyone around her. Crew members described her as gracious, professional, and kind. Even in the chaos of filmmaking, corsets, late nights, meticulous rehearsals, she carried herself with warmth. For Gwyneth, Viola wasn't just a role she played. It was a chapter of her life filled with joy, camaraderie, and a sense that she was part of something bigger, something timeless. After the role. So what happened after Viola? For many actors, one defining role can become both a blessing and a curse. But Gwyneth Paltrow managed to prove she was more than just Shakespeare in Love. Her very next big project was The Talented Mr. Ripley, 1999, where she held her own opposite Matt Damon and Jude Law in a dark psychological thriller. Again, she showed range, trading romance and Elizabethan gowns for suspense and moral ambiguity. In the mid-2000s, she took on Proof, 2005, a story about love, loss, and genius, which earned her an Olivier Award nomination for her stage performance and further praise for the film adaptation. And then came a completely new chapter, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In Iron Man 2008, Paltrow stepped into the role of Pepper Potts, Tony Stark's sharp-witted assistant turned CEO. It was a blockbuster on a scale she hadn't touched before. What began as a reluctant experiment became a decade-long run, with Pepper appearing in Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3, Avengers Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame. Suddenly, Paltrow was part of one of the most successful franchises in film history. But perhaps her boldest move wasn't on screen at all. It was in business. In 2008, she launched Goop, a small lifestyle newsletter that grew into a global wellness empire. It attracted headlines, criticism, lawsuits, and loyal followers, turning Paltrow into not just an actress, but a cultural brand. From indie films to billion-dollar blockbusters to entrepreneurship, she carved out a career trajectory that few could have predicted the night she sobbed on the Oscar stage. And yet, it all traces back to one decision. Remember, Gwyneth Paltrow almost said no to Shakespeare in Love. Heartbroken and exhausted, she nearly turned down the script that would change her life. But she didn't. She read it, she called it perfect, she fought for the part, and in doing so, she gave a performance that won an Oscar, defined a decade, and transformed her into an international star. More than 25 years later, Shakespeare in Love remains a cultural touchstone, not just for its box office success or its Oscar sweep, but because it captured the exact moment when Gwyneth Paltrow went from promising actress to unforgettable star. So here's the question. What other actor had one role that defined them forever? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts.